This video was recorded on the Sapphire Pulse RX Vega 56. Draugen is a short first-person mystery game set in 1920s Norway. You play as Edward Charles Harden, an American gentleman that's travelled halfway across the globe to a small mining village named Gravik, along with his hyperactive young companion Lizzie, in the hopes of locating his missing sister, Betty. Edward has been corresponding by letter with a local woman named Anna Fretland, who's graciously extended Edward an invitation to stay at the family's home, which he does accept. However, upon arrival, they find the village to be deserted, and there is a flag outside the Fretland family home flying at half-mast. It soon becomes apparent that the story contains two separate narrative arcs. We have the more intimate personal story of Edward's continued search for his sister, and then we've got the mystery surrounding the deserted village. Initially, the game starts off rather slowly, with a good 30 or so minutes spent on setting the scene. This is where you learn a little bit more about the Fretlands and get a better idea of what life was like for the people of Gravik. However, once the first few story beats start to land, the pace really starts to pick up. At the beginning of this video, I did mention that this was a short game, however, just how short did come as a bit of a surprise. You can comfortably reach the story's conclusion in under 3 hours, and that is without rushing. When I set out to make this video, I had not intended to play all that much. I just wanted to get a really basic understanding of what the game was all about, and then record enough gameplay footage to make a decent gameplay video, but I accidentally completed it. Now, because of how short, linear, and narrative focused the game is, it's really difficult to talk about or show anything after the first 30 or so minutes without marching deep into spoiler territory, so please excuse me if you think I'm being a little bit vague. The gameplay itself mainly involves wandering around the village looking for clues that may lead you to Betty, or shine a light on what's happened to the rest of the people living here. These clues will often trigger a conversation between Edward and Lizzie, where Lizzie will ask or say something that's often quite silly, and Edward will then correct her and elaborate in a little bit more detail. From time to time, you also got to choose Edward's response or ask a question, but honestly, these always kind of felt pointless, almost as if they were there simply to give off the illusion of choice.
I saw some sheds down by the water. There's the general store, the church.
In other words, time for some sightseeing? Well, it's a bright and beautiful day, and we have nothing better to do.
Throughout the environment, you will also find many spots where Edward can sit down and sketch the landscape. I don't think these really affect the game's outcome outside of an achievement, but they are pretty cool additions anyway. While writing this script, I was really hoping to be able to avoid the term walking simulator, as I know that it can often be seen to have a negative connotation. However, in many ways, that is exactly what this is. Draugen is basically a movie that requires you to press buttons in order to play. There is no choice or challenge, and there is very little freedom from the heavily scripted narrative. Thankfully though, the writing is pretty decent, and there is enough intrigue here to push you forward towards the story's conclusion. To be completely honest, I did enjoy the experience, and barring a few issues that I will go into shortly, I would have loved to be able to recommend this game to everybody that's watching this video. The problem is, I can't help but believe that how much you will enjoy this game is going to come down to how much you like Lizzie, because you're either going to love her or hate her. To be fair, this is most certainly by design. Personally, I did start to like her a little bit more as time went on, and I was able to drown out her constant nagging and silly questions. Lizzie is not just a companion that follows you around and does as she's told. The reality is that she is obviously the one that's in control of the whole story.
They did not. There's no sign of anyone. Aside from last night's Mistwalker.
I've been thinking about that.
Visually, Draugen has some very impressive vistas that have this oil-painted look about them. The colours really pop, and there is a sharp contrast between the dark shadows and the bright highlights. Unfortunately, however, I have to say that the game does lack a much-needed layer of polish in some areas of its presentation. While outside in the sun, many small objects look as if they are missing shadows and ambient occlusion, such as these train tracks. The stream that cuts through the village also appears to not be affected by the lighting, and I found that the volumetric fog could quite often penetrate slim solid objects, giving off this really strange appearance. Also, while Lizzie herself is fairly well animated, it would have been nice to see some better facial animations and lip syncing, as you do spend so much of the game actually chatting with her. I also experienced a few bugs with the interaction highlights caused by accidentally skipping sections of dialogue by asking something new during a speech gap where I thought the conversation was over. Rather than keeping these interaction highlights or dialogue options as white to indicate that I need to continue listening to them in order to trigger an event, they would instead fade out to grey as if they had already been completed, which would lead to some real confusion about what I was supposed to be doing next. Where the game struggles the most though, and the reason why I would struggle to recommend it to you guys, is in the optimization. We played this game on the Sapphire Pulse RX Vega 56 at 1080p using the Ultra Graphics preset, and it wasn't good. While we would spend most of the game over the 60 FPS mark, the frame rate was just literally all over the place. I could maybe understand if the performance was taking a dive when looking over the entire village, but no, we saw constant drops when simply looking into certain directions regardless of what was in view. What made this make even less sense to me is that often we could look down at a wall or maybe look at the floor and we'd see our frame rate plummet below 30 for no apparent reason. I even wondered if maybe this was an AMD driver problem, so I tested the game on a couple of Nvidia GPUs as well, and the results were exactly the same. Normally, I would quite happily just lower a few settings to find the optimal setup and then show the performance for that and then share the settings on the video. However, it was not worth it. This is one of those games where simply dropping from ultra to high will net you 30% more performance on average, but the graphics take such a massive hit, I just don't think that it's worth it, as it's still going to bring you nowhere near that fluid 60 FPS target. Thankfully, at the end of the day, this is a very slow paced game, so it's not like the performance affects your ability to play. If you have got a FreeSync monitor with low frame rate compensation, then the game should still play fine while looking very pretty. However, if you are like me and you really want that silky smooth feeling when playing your games, I'm afraid I can't quite recommend Draugen. Now, before I leave you all, I would just like to say thank you so much for stopping by and watching till the end of the video. If you are new around here, I would appreciate it if you would consider slapping that subscribe button and dinging that bell so you get notified of our future uploads. Also, if you are active over on Instagram, maybe you'd be interested in following our account over there. You will find it at SapphireTech_official. Now, if you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, you can let us know by leaving us a like or alternatively a dislike. Either way, your feedback is welcomed. If you've got any questions, suggestions or feedback, please do leave them in the comment section below this video and I'll try and get back to them as soon as possible. Once again, from myself and everybody here at the Sapphire Tech YouTube channel, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, we will catch you later. Bye bye.